borrowers don't even know they're playing the game. They're playing a game that's designed to keep them in a system of giving up control of their money. And someone else is going to profit. If you have banks and Fortune 500 companies and the 1%, the builders of the world, the Rockefellers, that strategy of keeping control that we discussed previously, that is giving you more predictability of your future. So the borrower mindset is a lack of control, and a builder is taking back control. You got to ask yourself who you're going to be. So in this episode, we're going to discuss why high earners struggle and how to break free. A lot of people believe that making more money, saving aggressively, or investing in the stock market, well, that's going to make you financially secure. But even high income earners and successful entrepreneurs find themselves struggling financially. Why? Well, the reason they don't control their money. They allow banks, financial advisors, financial institutions, they delegate that wealth and responsibility over to them. And in this episode, we're going to uncover the true financial power comes from controlling your capital. It's not chasing returns. It's not a step-by-step process. That's not what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about transitioning from being a borrower into a builder and the mindset that is required to make that transition. So Jason, tell our audience what they can learn today.
We're going to go through a lot, Jeremy, but the ones that are really near and dear, both my heart and I believe yours, are why traditional strategies, financial strategies, keep borrowers trapped, even at high income levels. And then we're going to go through some myths that the borrowers believe and the realities in contrast that the builders understand. And we're going to go why, we're going to have some fun and do famous borrowers who lost fortunes versus builders who built legacies. But more importantly, we're going to map out how you can go from, if you're a borrower, how you can adopt the things that are going to help you become a builder and create the things that you want to create in your future.
Yeah, so let's start with identifying, discontent here in the present. A lot of borrowers, well, they unknowingly follow a system that's going to keep them dependent. They can earn six figures, but they're still chasing financial security. They can invest in the stock market, but they're always worried about the next downturn or will their retirement last? A lot of borrowers, you'll find that they work hard, they save and they invest, but they just don't control their money, do they? And by following financial advice from financial advisors, deep down, they know that there's still something that's nagging at them a little bit. And part of it is because they delegated that control to someone else. They stopped taking control for themselves. So a lot of listeners out there, Jason, follow typical financial advice. They work hard, they save, they invest, but they're still anxious about their future. Why is that?
It's a great question. I think with the answer, it's going to shock a lot of people. They're anxious because they were programmed to be anxious. They were taught how to give up control of their money. They're taught how to take what's left over and then try to make more out of the little bit that's left over or the amount that they're getting a match on in a traditional work matching qualified plan kind of environment, which is some of the stuff we're going to go through today. And for me, like this really hits home. This really brings me back to when I was an employee and I thought that I could do what my parents taught me, Jeremy. I could show up first, I could leave last, I could work hard, I could be humble. And as long as I added value to those around me, as long as I kept doing my best, then everything would work out. And without a financial IQ, without really understanding the game I was playing, there's no way I was ever going to win. So that stress, that anxiety, that worry comes from really not understanding how to control the outcome. And you're really leaving it up to others. You're really leaving it up to, like you said, financial advisors, to banks, to Wall Street, to the market. And man, we were joking around today when we went out for a bike ride. My two buddies, my one buddy's really big into crypto. And he's like, oh, I can't buy today. Crypto's down. But when crypto goes back up, maybe when I come back from the bathroom, I'll buy. Because that's how it feels to be in those kind of markets. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. It's rapid. And so when you're tying your outcome to something that you don't control, it's going to lead to a little bit of anxiety and worry and fear and stress. I
Yeah,
think that's where a lot of people exist for money, Jeremy.
yeah, it's clear that if you're a high income earner and you're struggling financially, it's not that you have an income problem. it's likely that you have a system problem. You know, whether you've delegated your finances to someone else or you just haven't, been in the banking business, as we say, everyone should be in two businesses, the business that you're in and the banking business. But high income earners to find that they still struggle financially, it makes a lot of people scratch their head as in why. So there's a couple realities and a little bit of myth out there about borrowers and builders. And I
Hmm.
want to I want to ask you a couple questions. We'll go back and forth here. But what about this one? If I make more money, I'll be financially free. Is
Hmm.
that reality or myth?
Well, I'm going to call that one a myth, Jeremy. We're going to call that a myth because it didn't matter if, someone's making 60, 100, 150, 180, maybe 500, 800,000. If you don't have those systems in place to control the money, guess what's going to happen? Some of your human nature is going to catch up with you, and you're going to keep a lot less money than you make. I mean, people making tons of money, have tons of money flowing through their fingertips. And when I talk to them, I've had a lot of these conversations, Jeremy. I've talked to people with two businesses, both making over 250,000 a year and not being able to pay themselves even $800 a month.
Oh,
It's
wow.
real. I mean, the guy worked for the Department of Defense and had a winery, that was a hopping place that people loved, and both businesses were profitable. But because of the processes and the things that he was focused on, he gave up so much control of his money that he couldn't pay himself $800 a month.
We solved this as a myth as well in our previous episode. The Vanderbilts, right? Tons of money, lost it all within 3 generations. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to be financially free. If you don't have the systems in place, the processes to actually control that money, to stop delegating, to be able to control that money, to take back the banking functions of your life, you run the risk of not being financially free. If it's probably why you see so many lotto winners go out there and become broke, as an example, because think of like your wealth sitting in a bucket. And in your bucket, if you have a bunch of holes in it from different expenses, let it be taxes, fees, interest, poor planning, like financial, patterns, putting more money in the bucket doesn't stop the bucket from, leaking out. All you're doing is prolonging that. At some point, that bucket is going to drain and you're going to lose your money. So how do you put patches on your bucket? How do you stop the leaks?
I think it starts with investing in yourself. And we always talk about how that is the most valuable investment you could ever make, right? This investment between your ears. How can we invest more between our ears? And like you talk when you were talking about the financial leaks of someone winning the lotto, or maybe you're thinking of a professional athlete that you've admired who's lost all their money, or maybe it's, someone that's famous, a singer, an actress, an actor, someone else. And when we have problems between our ears with how money works and our rules around money, I don't know if that's even a hole in the bucket. I think that is like the bucket not holding any water at all. Like it's going to pass through, Jeremy. Like that's what I was thinking while you were describing the leaky bucket and finding how to patch it. If we're not able to understand our mindset around money first and really build that process, that discipline, that self-discipline around money, then how can you not have that become your reality? That myth that more money is going to take care of the problem if you don't really know what you're doing with the money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what about this question? Investing in the market is the only way to grow wealth.
I just had a guy say this, an assistant principal in Miami, say, I'm not afraid of the market. I'll actually be talking to him later today. That's good. I don't think you should be afraid of the market. I think you should look at the market as another tool. But if you're putting all your eggs in that basket, if you're thinking that is going to be just, hey, set it and forget it as you're always told, like, hey, it's going to work out. Look at the average return over this many years. And we know what that means. We've talked about it before. But no, that is a myth. Sorry, I was supposed to say it was a myth or a reality, right? No, that's a myth, Jeremy. It's a myth because you don't know what the future holds, especially with AI and with everything that's happening right now, with the different changes in currency, with all the stuff that's happening in the world. We are progressing faster than ever. How could you possibly know which stocks, which things are going to perform unless that's something that you really know, like, understand, study, And guess what? You're still going to make mistakes if you're someone who is a professional and does make a good return in the market. But if you're someone that doesn't know what that means, how in the world can you set your money into something and think it's going to be there in the future? You don't know if the market's going to be up or down in the future, right? There's four questions I like to ask around this, Jeremy, but I'm going to turn it back to you before I ask my four questions from someone who's looking to tie their money to the market in the future. So,
Yeah, so I think you also need to understand that investing is money that you can afford to lose, right? Savings is not money you can afford to lose. Investing is. So when people start investing their retirement, can you afford to lose your retirement?
well, Jeremy, that word retirement, I mean, we kind of poked some holes in that last time, but can you afford to? No, because it's about cash flow. Remember, we're helping people build the processes, the systems to create cash flow so they can have passive income, as Nelson talks about. So that way, maybe they're stopping doing the thing they're doing now, but they're still creating in some way, whether it's giving back to the community, living their life, whatever it is they choose to do, as long as they put their money to work. Because Warren Buffett's quote's pretty relevant right here. If you don't learn how to make your money work while you're sleeping, you will work to the day you die.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And it's as a real estate investor, I love control, right? It's one of the reasons I like assets. I invest in things that I know. At the end of the day, I still don't control the market. I don't control the real estate market. There are guardrails that I can put up. There are safety nets that I can put in place. But at the end of the day, I still am subjected to areas of the market, the financial side of it, where I take back the banking, so that way I don't, incur my own personal 2008, 2009 crisis. That's
Hmm.
taking back the banking function. To know that I have the finances where I'm funding my own deals or my rehab. I'm not going out to private lenders. I'm not relying on banks. I'm using infinite banking to fund my renovations or my acquisitions. That mitigates my risk because I've taken back some of that financial control. But when I'm looking at, all right, am I going to sell this asset? I can't make people buy my asset in the same way that if I were to buy someone else's asset, I can't make them sell it to me. So there's still things within a market, let it be the stock market, real estate, crypto, you name it market, that we just don't control. So if you're believing that investing is the only way to grow wealth, yeah, that's a myth. That's 100% a myth.
I think with an investment, like you just said, there's always a risk. It's what money can you afford to risk because there's no lid on it. That's how it's always described to me. You have a cup with no lid. You want to build a foundation that you can use that's guaranteed to grow, that's guaranteed to protect you. You want to turn, or you want to give $1 three jobs where you're saving it, where it's guaranteed to grow, where you can use someone else's money. Everyone that does investing, especially real estate, likes OPM, right, Jeremy? And so
Yeah, other people's money.
we want to use other people's money to be able to do the things we're going to finance anyhow. Because if we take it back to simple principles all the time, if we take it back to the principle that we finance everything we buy, there's only three ways. You either earn interest, you pay interest, or if you're someone who pays in cash, you give up the opportunity for your money to earn you interest. Go ahead. If you got a fourth way, let us know because I do not know of it. They're the only ones I know.
Yeah, I want to stay on this just a little bit longer. A lot of 401ks and IRAs, they're marketed as the best way to quote unquote retire, right? To take and remove yourself from service. As you know, we don't like that definition, but people's traditional, I want to slow down later in life. How about that? We'll redefine retirement for, right now as a way to slow down in life. And people think that 401ks and IRAs are the best way to do that. But what do you do when you invest in a qualified account like an IRA or 401k? Well, you have market volatility. We already discussed we don't control the markets. You also have governments. Every year, the government changes how much capital you can put into these qualified accounts. There are limits and restrictions on when you can access that money. And then if you're in a traditional account, you have what's called required minimum distributions or RMDs. Age 73, guess what? Uncle Sam wants some of that tax money back. So if the market is down and you have to sell at a loss in order to, because it's mandatory for you to take that distribution, you're SOL. The government's saying, no, you have an RMD this year. We want our taxable income. you have to do it. Whether or not you need the money, you still have to do that. That brings us back into the sequence of returns risk, where I have to sell at a loss in order to pay Uncle Sam the taxes, even if I didn't need the money. But what does
Mm.
that do to my overall wealth? Well, we know that money in the market over time, it does go up. There's statistics and evidence that over time it does. But if you don't have the opportunity to allow that to recover, it's a moot point. And then there's also the tax uncertainty. It's more often than not that taxes go up over time. Now, I would love for the administration to be able to get rid of the income taxes and all these, new tax laws that, or lack of law, I guess, repealing of law that they're trying to talk about. But bottom line, the executive branch doesn't pass law. It's still going to take an act of Congress in order to do that. To repeal the income tax is going to be an act of Congress. So, as much as the administration wants to do that, there's a lot of resistance for that to occur. And we just have so much national debt. I was listening to one of the former comptrollers for the government, and he was discussing about how much debt there actually is for us to pay off. Part of that has to do with fractional reserve banking, as you and I know, where if you're not familiar, fractional reserve banking is a dollar goes into a bank, the bank can lend it up to 10 times. Well, what did that just do? Create inflation. When you create debt, when you create inflation, how does the government typically pay for that? You and me, the taxpayer, taxes. For that reason, taxes typically go up. Why is it that people are paying 20, 30, 40% of their income in taxes? So if you're going to put your retirement, your nest egg, into a system like an IRA or 401k that is likely going to pay additional taxes in the future, what are you truly doing? You're going to pay taxes on the harvest, not the seed. So that's kind of the illusion of this retirement strategy. And if I can stay on my soapbox for just a little bit longer, Jason, what about the whole myth of the 401k matches? I know that we got people out there right now. It's like, but Jeremy, my employer gives me a 401k match. It's free money. Is it free money? I'm going to ask, is it free money? Well, there's an opportunity cost associated with it. Go look this up, Jason. Employers who give a 401k match typically pay less income than for the same job offered by another employer who doesn't offer a match. So, what does that mean? I'm going to give you a match, but I'm going to pay you less. I'm going to pay you less money. You're going to take that money, put it into a system like a 401k for a future payout that may or may not work and that you'll probably pay higher taxes on. Oh, and by the way, if you don't stick around with me for the next 3 to 5 years, you don't get it anyway. Is that freedom? No, it's a vesting period. And how often do people typically change jobs? 3, 5 years? So when you come to me and you say, hey, Jeremy, I got this new job. I've got the coffee bar. I've got free parking. We have a studio with yoga and they bring in goats. And by the way, I've got a 401k match.
Goat yoga. Sorry.
So you tell me that you got this 401k match, but what you're not telling me is how much you're making. And I'm going to ask you, hey, Jason, how long were you with your last employer? 3 years? Is this the final place? Are you at your forever destination? Did you reach the tippity top of your career? Is you're going to be here forever? Do you plan to be there for the next 3 to 5 years? Because a lot of folks don't. So all of that employee match is gone anyway. That's
Jeremy,
kind of
can I make this simpler? I mean, everything that you're sharing, everyone go look into this, ask the things, and ask yourself a simple question too. If your employer is giving you a match, why are they doing that? It's not for you. Why are they doing that? I mean, some of them might be for golden handcuffs, as we talk about, but they're also getting a huge tax benefit from doing so. Okay, so just look into that. But let me ask 4 questions, Jeremy. Let's bring it back and make it. We say we're going to make this as simple as possible, as accessible as possible, as palatable as possible, digestible. So everyone write this down. Write down these 4 questions. And I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you something that you don't want to hear first. One day you will no longer be here. You're going to graduate, die, pass away. You're no longer going to be here. So when you look at a quote unquote retirement plan, when you look at something that is locking your money away in financial prison till you're at least 59 and a half, just ask yourself these 4 questions. And I'll ask Jeremy. Jeremy, will you play along with me? We didn't rehearse any of this. We don't play along with me. You want to answer my 4 questions I ask all the time in my calls?
Yeah, so long as there are no wrong answers, yes, I'll play.
Yes, there's no wrong answers. Jeremy, do you know how long that you're going to live?
No.
Okay. So there you go. And if anyone knows how long, let us know. Pop it in the chat because unless you're an actuary, you probably don't know how long you're going to live. You can look at your family history, but you have no guarantee. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Jeremy, do you know what the market is going to look like when you hit that retirement quote unquote age? Is it going to be up or down? Do you know?
I do not know.
No, you don't have a crystal ball. That's weird. Okay. How about taxes? You kind of mentioned taxes. Will taxes be higher or lower when you retire?
I would hope that they be lower, but I don't know the answer to that.
You don't
My
know. And I can
assumption is
guarantee you if they're lower, which they're historically low now, if you go back and look at the start of 1913 to now and just look at any charts, you'll see that they've been up as high as what, like 80, 85, 90% at some point. And now we're historically low, which sounds crazy to people, but they're just find more things to tax us on. And then the last one, do you know what inflation's going to look like when you retire?
oh, I know 100% sure on this one. All right.
You
I
do.
100% know that it is going up.
It
So I'm
is
going to
going
say,
up. Okay, so Jeremy says it is going up. So if anybody ever went through fifth grade, sixth grade science and you did a hypothesis, when you did that, how many variables did you want to have?
controlled and uncontrolled variables, right?
You wanted to have as little variables as possible. You're trying to get it down to maybe one variable you're controlling so you can prove or disprove your hypothesis. So, in this retirement hypothesis we just made, we just introduced you four questions that gives you four variables that you cannot know the answer to. You do not know how long you're going to live. You do not know what taxes are going to be later in the future. You do not know what inflation is going to be, and you do not know where the market's going to be. So if you're depending on any of those four things for what your retirement might look like and how you're going to take care of yourself, is it any wonder that most people aren't retiring financially free or with financial security? I don't think so. It's just not set up for someone to win because there's too many variables.
So what do I do, Jason?
You start asking different questions, Jeremy. Yeah, that's the first thing. You say, what do I do? You ask somebody that could help you. You find out, well, we could do a whole exercise and show you what banks are doing, right? We could show you what the wealthiest people have done. We can show you what the Rockefellers have done. Why 150 Rockefellers and six generations later, while they still have wealth. They built systems, they built processes, and they took back control of their money. And it's fun to say, they brought banking back to the you and me level. Doesn't that sound awesome?
Yeah, and I think that's what really separates builders from borrowers, right? Borrowers, they don't have systems, they don't have control. They've delegated their wealth, they delegated the banking function to someone else. Whether you take money and you put it into someone else's bank, like a Wells Fargo or Bank of America, or you give it to Vanguard or BlackRock, you gave it to someone else. Builders control. Like you said, we don't know the answer to those four questions, but if I can control more variables, if I can control the banking function of my life, my future is more predictable. Would it not be? That's
100%.
that's the difference between a
100%.
borrower and a builder. Like very simply, borrowers don't even know they're playing the game. They're playing a game that's designed to keep them in a system of giving up control of their money, and someone else is going to profit. If you have banks and Fortune 500 companies and the 1%, the builders of the world, the Rockefellers, that strategy of keeping control that we discussed previously, that is giving you more predictability of your future. So the borrower mindset is a lack of control, and a builder is taking back control. You got to ask yourself who you're going to be.
And it comes back to, we talk about this all the time. So it comes back to having that vision, that long-term vision of where you're going and what do you want and what are you creating, and really taking time to get comfortable for yourself. Because some people, maybe you don't want to be a multimillionaire. Maybe you don't want to be someone that's a Rockefeller, but you want to have peace of mind. You want to feel like you have control. You want to feel secure. And that really comes with understanding, what do you want? Because some people, wealth or retirement, passive income, as Nelson likes to frame retirement, might be you need, what you're making now to retire. Some people might want lots, some people might want a little, but whatever that means to you, there's a process that you can put in place to reach those goals. Like, how good would that feel if you knew as long as you did one thing, as long as you did what you were committed to, and you're going to have flexibility in that commitment because it's built in to protect you? Because we understand, we have lots of these conversations. We understand that one of the biggest questions is what happens when I lose my job in 5 years? What happens when this happens? What happens when this happens? Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we do know if you only are controlling one thing, if you're only in charge of one thing, that commitment to yourself and building and capitalizing your system, your foundation to do everything else, to be that builder, well, then guess what? You have a lot more control. You have a process that's proven, and all you have to do is execute, and you get support, you get training, you get ongoing teaching, training, and you get to test yourself to see where you're at. And you're gonna make some mistakes, Jeremy, at some time, right? You're gonna have moments where things might not go exactly like you planned, but then you're already going to know, well, I just have to do this because you're going to stop, you're going to measure it because it's important to you. And then you're going to be able to adjust and keep moving forward, keep taking action, keep doing.
Yeah. And being a builder has nothing to do with your income. It has everything to do with control, right? Do you control the banking functions? Because there are plenty of borrowers out there, Jason, who have lost it all. We talked about the Vanderbilts. What are
Yep.
some notable athletes or celebrities? I'm sure that our listeners know of the athletes and celebrities and famous people out there who had tons of income, but they didn't control the banking function. They were borrowers. They were playing a game that they didn't recognize that they were playing, and they lost it all. You mentioned Mike Tyson in a previous episode, right? As a
Yeah, we
famous
talked to
borrower.
Iron Mike just because it's such a fascinating story. Like when you watch him, I mean, he was worth, did you guys know he was worth $400 million at one point? 400 million. I mean, coming from where he came from in New York City, growing up the way he did, I mean, and building his wealth of 400 million, but ending up bankrupt. And we saw what happened, right? I mean, I joked around last time, but coming back at 50, I think 58 years old and fighting someone, boxing someone on global TV, on global network to make money again, to earn $10 million. And I don't think Iron Mike would have scripted his life that way. But because he didn't understand, there's so many more too. There's like Kim Basinger, who was famous when I was young, probably before your time, Jeremy, but she was getting about 10 million per film and she went bankrupt. You have Nicolas Cage is another huge actor that was in everything. Like you couldn't watch a movie without Nicolas Cage in it, bankrupt. And then you had, I was joking around with Connor and said, "Hey, you know about half dollar?" And he's like, "What, Dad?" I'm like, 50 cents every time there's a birthday. Every time there's a birthday, you hear a 50 cent song about your birthday. And he went broke, right? So it's because they didn't have a system, a process of controlling their money. And like you keep saying, they gave up control to somebody else.
But what about builders? You have any examples of famous builders? Not the Rockefellers. We already had an episode on them. What's another builder you can think of?
Well, I mean, you think about, how about Warren Buffett, who's sitting in cash right now? I know Warren Buffett has specially engineered whole life. Bill Gates, another huge builder. You have Walt Disney. Walt Disney is someone's interesting though, because Walt Disney did use a specially engineered whole life because no one really take him serious, Jeremy. It was only, hey, I got a duck and a mouse. It's a great idea. It's going to be huge. It's going to be global. And people are like, nah. And so he bet on himself and he used his whole life insurance to start Disney. But I also did research that he did go bankrupt at some point. So I didn't dig further, but I found that fascinating since we use that as an example all the time.
Here's a story that I really like. And this person was not a stockbroker. This person was not a CEO backed by venture capital, but this person did implement IBC into her life. And she ended up selling her company to Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, for $1
Mm.
billion. You know the story of Doris Christopher?
I do, but please expand on it.
Yeah, so Doris Christopher, she had the idea of taking home products and then taking them to market. And again, she wasn't backed by CEOs or venture capital or anyone else. She actually took, I believe it was a $3,000 loan from her husband's whole life insurance policy. And that was the only net capital injection into her business. She was able to grow and scale that business over a period of time. And she ended up selling that business for 1 billion. What I like about this story is it brings banking back to the you and me level. You don't have to be a millionaire or a billionaire to implement the infinite banking concept. Again, this is a process and you can scale it to what is meaningful and manageable for your life. And she is just a prime example of someone who took a loan from a life insurance policy to fund a business that she had a dream of building. Now, was IBC responsible for her building the business? No. Like she still built it. Like that was her
No,
creativity.
I was thinking about her belief, like her belief to leverage her husband's $3,000 out of his whole life. And she must have been a heck of an influencer, a heck of someone that had so much belief that her husband's like, yes, Doris, go for it, right? And to take that from where she started, just the belief. I'm really anchoring in Doris's belief in herself, in what she was doing. And then think about the person she became on the way. Think about the excitement of being that builder over time, Jeremy, where she had to build relationships, build teams, build all of the things to take it from starting out and people being like, oh, yeah, you have this dream. I mean, how many people probably laughed at her to take it until she exited for $1 billion? Like, I don't think that was ever her intention, right? She just believed in something enough that she's like, I think there's going to be something here. And then people saw what she saw and they started really investing in her as a builder.
Yeah. And I kind of want our audience to take a moment here and imagine your life a year from now. Okay. A year from now, you have your money, it's growing, it's compounding, you're able to access it tax free, you have full liquidity, you're able to finance your investments, your business, whatever it is that's passionate, you're passionate in life. You don't stress about money. You're not following by the bank's rules. You are the bank. I want you to think about yourself 1 year from now where you're still playing the banker's game. Your money's still sitting in a bank. You're making them rich instead of yourself. You're
Hmm.
still at the mercy of the stock market. You're still following traditional financial advice and financial rules, playing the borrower's game, stuck in the borrower's trap. And another year has passed and nothing has changed. Those are two futures. Those are two paths, and it's one decision. And you have to ask yourself, which choice are you going to make? Which version of yourself do you want to be?
Powerful question. And think about it. Like Jeremy said, close your eyes unless you're driving listening to us. Don't do that, please. But if you're not, take some time today to reflect, write it down. Really see yourself a year from now, like Jeremy described. See yourself having built a system that lets you take back control of your money, that puts you in charge, that builds a guaranteed future, a legacy for your family and the people that you love and the things that you love. Or imagine yourself exactly where you're at, not taking action, not doing something different, and still relying on that match, that future, the unknown future, and that feeling of stress and worry and anxiety. Like when you go on vacation with your family and you're like, okay, everyone wants a souvenir. Where can I go and find some cheap souvenirs to bring back? Or, I heard him joking around on the radio today. A guy that's been on here in Orlando for 30 years. He's like, Ma, they don't sell souvenirs anymore. But because of the scarcity mindset of really acting like a borrower. And I hear it all the time in conversations on the radio with people with different things. And I'm always thinking, man, if they just knew what I knew and we're open to hearing. Because Jeremy, we can chase everyone down. We can invite everyone to the infinite banking bus and say, hey, get on. It's an infinitely large bus. But our reality is most people are afraid of something. Most people think, well, if it's so good, why isn't everybody doing it?
So, I mean, that's a fantastic question. And the thing is, people are doing it. I would like to flip it on this. Is it so good that it's shouldn't that they don't want to teach it, right? If everyone was doing it, how are the banks going to make money? The banks need to keep people in the borrower's mindset. They need to keep you right where you're at because they can't grow and they can't expand their own systems unless you continue being a borrower. There's a reason that builders build. They end up building because they have taken back control. They're not waiting for permission, and they have a destiny that they have defined for themselves. Borrowers, a lot of folks, and to myself included, right? I can tell the story of when I knew that I was a borrower and I had that epiphany. And growing up, I grew up in a family where we didn't have a lot of money. I was always afraid of money. There was arguments in the family about money. My mother worked long hours at McDonald's. My father was in the military, constantly deployed. And I was doing what I could as a kid to make money. I would rake leaves. I would wash cars. Jason, I would sell frogs. You can ask my mother. I would sell frogs to the
Wait,
neighborhood
who's
kids.
buying frogs?
Like the neighborhood kids, man, I would take their allowance money, and you can imagine my mother getting heat from the neighborhood parents for me selling frogs. And I was accumulating money. And I remember around the age of 10 or so, I had about $100, and my mom came and asked me for a loan. And I hesitated out of fear, not because I didn't want to help, but I had the realization, the epiphany that with money, there's responsibility and there's control and security that's associated with it. And I started chasing money. I worked grueling jobs growing up. I was hauling produce in the back of semi trucks at 3
Hmm.
a.m., tomatoes, and I was doing landscaping in the summer months over at cemeteries. I was selling boiled peanuts down in Florida on the side of the road for people heading out to the beach. And I was chasing what I thought was security, what I thought was control. But as I was, stepping back and recognizing and looking at my investments, so I went to West Point. I was investing in the stock market. I was playing the borrower's game, not recognizing that I was playing a game that was designed to keep me in the loop. I was staying in a loop, and I thought that by having the financial advisor and paying these fees, my wealth was growing. I was creating security, but I wasn't. I wasn't creating security. I was playing a game that was designed to keep me as a borrower. I was delegating my wealth to someone else. I was putting banking into someone else's hands. And until I took that, I had that epiphany. And that epiphany came from reading Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I had that epiphany that, wow, I've been a borrower, not a builder. And when I had that epiphany and I started looking at the world as a builder, looking at the world of taking back control, designing my own future, not delegating my wealth, not delegating my future to like someone else's design and their plan, and it opened up all this other freedom and opportunity, right? I wasn't chasing money anymore. Instead, I was controlling it. I was directing it. And that was my mindset shift. That was me
It shifted from
recognizing
it to a tool. It's an incredible story. When I hear you say, Jeremy, it shifted to being a tool for you. It went from something that you used to trade your time for. I did the same thing. Like I recognize that pattern. You start getting a side hustle. You start working after work. You grind, you work hard, you trade your time for money because that's what our parents taught us. They were hard workers, right? They would show up first, leave last, work hard, be humble, be polite, but they wouldn't talk about money. They'd be grateful to get any kind of raise, but they weren't asking for raises typically. And like what you're saying is like when it became like we talked in the last episode how we both get up, do some kind of prayer, some kind of moment in the morning where we're reading scripture or we're meditating or we're thinking about our intentions for the day. The second thing we both do, and we never had talked about this before the last episode, is we check our bank accounts. I started doing that after I read Nelson's book 4+ years ago and thought, like anyone who's listening to this has thought at one point, you've all thought this. If this was true, every American would do this. And I actually thought, well, it is true. So why isn't every American doing this? And said, well, this is something that's worthy of my energy, effort to go out and teach it, to go out and help other people become free. Because once it was like, it was that moment in life. I was 46 here. I mean, thank God you didn't have to wait as long as I did. I don't know what age you are listening to this, but I was 46 when I finally realized, man, I'm halfway through my MBA in leadership because I had this story that no one was going to give me equity in a $600 million company with a bachelor in fine arts degree in medical illustration. Like, what? Like, how's that guy doing business? How's it, you know what I mean? Like, I had all these stories and I just couldn't figure out the game because it was unfigure outable, if that's a word. Like, you couldn't figure it out if you don't know the rules. And like you said, it was that shift for both of us that we understood that when we become a builder, you start seeing the world differently. You start seeing the world through possibility and what you can do versus what you can't do and what I can afford. It's a different mindset. Like we talk about all the time, the wealthy have a completely different mindset than the borrower.
Yeah. So as we kind of close things out, I'm just going to invite the audience again. I want you to envision yourself a year from now. Again, you take control of your finances, you take control of the banking function of your life. You control your liquidity, you control where your money's being directed, or you keep doing what you're already doing. You have uncertainty, you're subjected to a game that you didn't realize you were playing, and you think about your futures. You have two of them, two futures, two paths, one choice. Where do you want to be 1 year from now? And hopefully, we invite you onto the podcast. You tell us about your story of transformation, and I can't wait to connect with you. So, Jason, do you have anything else?
It all starts with one thing, a decision. This is your favorite pick your ending type book. Jeremy has painted a nice picture for you. Pick your ending. Is it going to be story A? Is it going to be story B? How do you want to feel at the end of your story? Go to our wealthwisebanking.com to book a call with us. You can also keep listening to us. Go listen to our stories of transformation. Go listen to the episode with Corey Littlefield. Be someone that makes the choice that picks what's possible for your future. So you can start that journey by you've been training with us, go test, get to the point where you're coming back on to teach others. And that's it. It's that simple. So Jeremy, thank you for sharing your stories, your wisdom today. It's always a blessing to be here with you, man.
Yeah, likewise. I'm glad that we're doing this together. So we're impacting lives.
It is fun. So, and it's fun too. Look, we get to get this cool stuff so we can be here with you guys. So, until the next time, go check out our other episodes. New episodes drop every Wednesday. We'll see you guys on the next one. And we don't even know what we're going to talk about yet. Maybe we do, but you'll have to wait and find out.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on WealthWise Banking. If today's episode inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and give us a like. It's a simple way to help others discover these empowering strategies and join our community. Together, we're building a network of people who believe financial freedom is within everyone's reach. Remember, financial independence is about making every dollar work for you, one step at a time. Until next time, stay inspired, stay in control, and keep building your legacy the wise way.